Hello and welcome to episode 2 of I'm Just Trying My Best podcast.
Aren't we all, Adam? Aren't we all?
Right, that's the whole show in one line. As always, I'm joined by my business partner and friend Chevelle Bedra, principal AI strategist for Modern Workery. Chevelle, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for asking. We finally got out of this heat wave that has been blanketing the Midwest, especially in the Metro Detroit area. So it's nice to get out of that. We're not sweating profusely just going outside.
Yeah, I think we tried to record this podcast last week, I think, Adam, and I had a bit of a Gilligan's Island situation with a storm and a boat, and then it was like 90,000 degrees and I was sweating and so yeah, it's nice. But I still I'm hosting my family up north. So just if there's a random child that runs by or you hear, Mom, where's my meatloaf? I apologize. Uh, I'm just trying my best here.
Are we all? How is that meatloaf? You make a mean meatloaf?
No, no, I do not. I am not a very good cook. I'm more of like a Door Dasher. I'm really good at DoorDash ordering, but you're a pretty good cook. You cook a lot, right?
I wouldn't say I'm a chef, but I do like to dabble in the culinary arts a little bit here and there. But maybe if this podcast goes south, you might see me on the next episode of Next Level Chef. Who knows?
I would I would vote for you. Are you able to vote? It's really good.
I don't think I would be. I think it's just the three expert chefs that get to say so. But if there's a phone a friend, I'll definitely call you.
Don't call me, call Copilot. I can't help you, but I will vote for you. I will
Well,
support you.
thank you. Interestingly enough, like Copilot has been, kind of one of those go-tos for things like that, right? Like it's insane that the other day I was looking up, chicken, Southwestern chicken egg roll recipe, and I had no idea where to start. So what I do, I opened up Copilot and said, "Hey, I need a Southwest chicken egg roll recipe," and then boom, there it was, right? All the ingredients, what to do, step by step. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a cheat code for life.
I use AI for everything. Like I joke, I don't have an original thought anymore. I use it for literally everything. One thing you can do, Adam, is you can also just take a picture of your pantry or your fridge and say, "Hey, here's the ingredients I have. What can I make?" It's just a little. I
I'm
can't
gonna
do the
try that.
actual cooking, but I can teach you how you can use AI to help you with the cooking. I just get to taste it. Okay, it's fair.
Well, if we listen to social media, soon we'll all have robots like the Jetsons that will be able to prepare our food for us.
Dude, take my money. I would have a robot. If I could have a robot that would just like fold my laundry, like sign me up. I will worry about any complications from that later down the line. Take my
I
money.
think I think we would all benefit from having somebody or some object be able to fold our laundry and cook and clean for us. That sounds like a dream.
Yeah, and I think it's a good lesson, right? So, you have this robot that can do some of these tasks that we don't like doing, that it's not really enriching our lives. So that way we can spend more time with our families or spend more time. And that's kind of exactly what AI and this technology is supposed to do, right? Is like take over some of the stuff that we're not good at, we don't like to do, so we could spend time on more value adding, enriching things. So I think it would be a good, I think I need to buy one just to illustrate that. So.
Right, right. Well, hopefully, I don't think it'll be too long until we are able to utilize technology for that. But you're absolutely right. AI should be utilized in a functionality that um, takes away malicious tasks, or not malicious because that means mean, but takes away everyday tasks, right? To help us have better lives, enjoy time with our family. And I think we're kind of in the building stages, not only us, but within other organizations, of being able to identify, hey, what can AI do, right? What can it do to help improve our processes, our organizations, our workflows, and give our employees a little bit better helping hands, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say that your word choice was spot on because I think laundry is malicious. And I think some of the tasks that we do every day, and that's, again, there's so much stuff that we do every day that we just don't find value from or we don't enjoy, and it takes away from that stuff that we really do enjoy. And I think that's really the goal of, like, you know, and the real benefit that I think a lot of people are just kind of glossing over, is just those small things that we can do to make our lives a little bit better, make us more efficient, make us more successful. Um, and if we can get rid of the malicious laundry, I think that's a good first step.
Hey, I'm all for that. Sign me up.
What would your
Social,
robot's name be if you had a robot?
that's, I feel like that's something that, the name needs to come with the environment, right? Like I feel like I need to be able to see my robot and then it'll be like a click, right? It'll be like, oh, this robot's name's Henry, right? It just fits. What about you? What would your robot name be?
Uh, I asked a question. I don't have a good answer. I don't know. Maybe Rob. Rob's the robot. What I would do, Adam, is I would use Copilot to help me come up with a clever name for my robot.
There we go.
Here we go.
It's funny that you say that. I guess we are in a time where robot names are going to become just as important as what you name your child, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Not as important, but I mean, I think this technology is going to become a part of our lives, and so you might as well have some fun with it, make it a little less intimidating.
Yeah. I think it is a part of our lives, regardless if we're directly involved or if we're not directly involved. I think everybody knows somebody who maybe has been affected or says they're going to be affected, right? With AI replacing jobs, hopefully replacing laundry folding and dishes at some point in time. But right now, there's a big story on social media about Ford Motor Company releasing 350 engineers and then bringing them back, all due to insufficient AI strategy, right? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, so we're in Detroit, so my husband's actually in the automotive industry, so this is kind of interesting for us. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good illustration of a company that moved a little bit too quickly, got a little bit too ahead of themselves with some of this stuff, and now they're kind of having to, go back and maybe right some missteps that they took. And I think I'm seeing a lot of that, and I think we're going to see even more of that in coming months and even maybe years of people just feel this need to move quickly because that's kind of the pace that it feels like. But companies are just trying to move too quickly. And I think they're going to make some mistakes along the way. And I think it's like a perfect illustration of that.
hmm Yeah, and it sounds like Ford Motor Company leaned a little bit too hard on AI strategy for quality control. And they topped for the first time in 16 years the JD Power uh, initial quality study for the first time, which always makes me think of what you just mentioned. Companies going so fast, right? Trying to reach some sort of end target the quickest, the fastest, right? But with this technology and what things can utilize, like such as Copilot, to help streamline workflow and processes, do you think that companies, big, small, medium, feel some sort of intimidation or some sort of reflection of getting to a certain point the quickest?
Yeah, I mean, you hear in the headlines, and it's doing such a disservice. Like you see this a lot in tech right now, that a lot of these tech companies are laying off, 10,000 people, 20,000 people, and they're citing AI as the reason for that. And I think that that's not what's actually happening. I think that they're maybe overcorrecting some mismanagement over recent years. They're getting some pressure from their board or shareholders to maybe cut costs, and they're using AI. You say AI in an earnings call, and your stock price, right, like kind of jumps. That's what's been happening. And so I think a lot of companies are using that as a way to trim things up a little bit, citing AI, and then they're getting that lift from that. But what's happening now is it's really risky because it's short-sighted. So your employees then that are remaining in that company, they're not going to feel very confident, in their role. Like they're not going to be like, hey, I really want to learn AI when I just saw Bill down the hall get displaced by AI. So I think it's very short-sighted that companies are doing this. And company it's still early. Like companies don't even know yet how it's going to work out. And I see a lot of organizations doing this is they're jumping the gun a bit. Like with the Ford example, what might have been a better approach for them is to, hey, talk to the engineers. Hey, what's getting in your way? What are some of those challenges? How can we use AI to support you and help you be more efficient? And you're the expert, right? But they kind of completely eliminated that, and then they found that it wasn't working. So, whereas if they would have taken that slow but steady approach, they would be far better off than they are now. And again, I think we're going to see a lot of that in coming weeks and months.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think from a leadership level approach, talking to your employees and integrating something that's new, something that changed, something that's more so fearful right now, right? And being able to have that level of vulnerability where it's more of a, hey, what can we do for you? How can we make this adapt more and make your workload less? And be a tool and not a replacement for people. And I think especially now with organizations, having layoffs due to AI or saying they're restructuring their workforce because the AI capabilities are there, that's going to bring fear, right? That's going to be resistance to change when the real issue should be how can we utilize AI to help you with your everyday tasks and make your life easier? Talk about a retention strategy. If you were to, tell employees, hey, would you be open to having access to a tool that will delegate your administrative responsibilities, free up time, have you leave the office at 5 o'clock every day to spend time with your family? Or would you rather the message be, would you want a tool that can replace you? Right.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say probably the first option, right, is going to help you retain your workforce. And that's what it should be looked at as a tool to help you with your daily tasks, help you automate some things. And if you look at the different functionalities across, organizations, whether it's your finance department, your operations, your HR, I mean, the capability in the help and support that AI can offer you is, is crazy, right? I think that a lot of organizations are just really utilizing it right now to say, hey, spell check this email or reformat this email so I can send it off. Where sure, it can do that, right? It can save you some time, but I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what the actual benefit could be.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And I think messaging is so important. And I think that's a part that people are missing. They're focusing too much on the technology and they're not focusing enough on the adoption and kind of messaging. So I was meeting with an executive and he wanted to create like a narrative around the job loss that was going to happen in his organization related to AI and wanted to be transparent and upfront about that. But I'm like, dude, you don't even have a AI tool that's working in your organization. Like, why are you telling people that they're losing their jobs or going to lose their jobs in the future when you don't even know that, and B, like you're nowhere even near where that would be, And so I think, and he's not wrong. It wasn't a bad thing. He wanted to be transparent and actually be protective of his people in the sense, but like I think that pressure, the keeping up with the Joneses, that pressure to move faster and faster and faster is causing people to make just really kind of irrational decisions. And I think you're right. Like if you could just help your people figure out I call them like pebbles in your shoe. So we all have pebbles in our shoe, those annoying things that just we hate, whether it be a process, whether it be like some type of approval, process that we need or steps that we need to take like that are just super annoying. We don't add value to, they don't add value to us. Like get rid of that stuff first. People are going to be really excited. They're going to be bought in. They're going to want more just naturally. They're going to be advocates then for it versus very defensive and not want to. And I think I see leaders time and time again just try to skip over those steps. There's a lot of value still with Copilot, just helping people be more efficient in their day. Um, I think one challenge with that, though, that we're seeing is it is hard to calculate that, right? It's hard to show your board, hey, we're saving millions of dollars, or we're, be able to bring this much more revenue in, because it's like all these little micro moments of productivity. It's hard to kind of aggregate that, but you have to kind of trust the process a bit, and
Mhm.
have faith that it is getting better, um, before you start to just, laying people off and having to hire them back, which is very counterproductive. But, kudos to Ford, though, for having the vulnerability to talk about it, and, you know, say, hey, like didn't really make the right decision. Here's what we
Mhm.
learned from it. Here's what we're going to do going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time that Ford Motor Company has made a jump like this, right? You think about that's what they came from. They built the first automobile, right? So going from horse and carriage to this, right? And now they're showing the right way to, you know, show that level of vulnerability of, hey, we didn't get it right the first time, and we have to call people back, right? But to your point too, where a lot of organizations are looking at AI as a quick financial fix. What can we reduce headcount? What can we utilize it for to save us money? However, the bigger picture is how much money is it going to cost when you have to rehire 350 engineers back to your organization, right? I don't know the details, but I can imagine there might have been severances involved or benefit, durations of where Ford was covering portions of coverage. So all of that adding into it, and I'd like to see the spreadsheet that says, was it worth it or was it not? Right.
Um,
Again, giving the technology to those engineers to help them do their job more efficient, might have been the solution instead of just replacement. Right.
yeah. I think one thing I found in, 20 years of working in like change management and people is like the employee does not have a seat at the table enough. Like this could have all been avoided if they brought some engineers in, sat them down and said, hey, do you think this will work? They probably would have said no, and here's why. And I think that's also something I see a lot of people making mistakes on, is they're like designing all these like, you know, agentic workflows and all of this really cool stuff, but like they're not doing it based on feedback from the people actually doing the work. And then you're just kind of compounding problems potentially at that point. So you've got to talk to your people. And it doesn't need to be like some fancy survey, it doesn't need to be a thing. Just go, right? So if you're in manufacturing, like go down and talk to some of the people on the shop floor. Hey, what's three things that annoy you about your work you do? Like they'll tell you. But we gotta listen, and not need a fancy study, or a group of consultants to come in and tell us what those problems are. We just have to kind of open our ears a bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, you talk about the uncertainty, right? The level of trust that would be built if, leadership was walking around, you mentioned manufacturing, the shop floor, asking them, hey, what are three things that you can't stand doing, right? And what if you're utilizing, Copilot to eliminate those three things, right? But just being heard, and you mentioned it, a lot of employees don't have a seat at the table. I think that true leadership, organizations that have great cultures, have those leaders in place that actually go talk to their employees, find out what they're doing, what their headaches are, and trying to alleviate those headaches. And, AI is going to be a huge one, right? Of navigating just the fear behind it, the fear of, is this going to be replaced? Or if maybe the leadership isn't used to walking that shop floor, and now you have employees that are like, oh my God, you know, leadership just talked to me. Are they going to replace me because they're asking me like what I don't like to do? Right. So I feel like normalizing conversations, getting to know your workforce and figuring out ways to be authentic, ways to show vulnerability, is really can one, build great rapport with your workforce, but two, build that trust so that when you do implement something like an AI adoption strategy, that you have buy-in versus the fear of it.
Yeah. And I think leaders need to go into it knowing that, like, with the intention of not using AI to replace jobs. And I know, again, they're shareholders, and I know it's hard to do that. But I think if you look back at history, I have a lot of spirited debates about this with people, because that's one of the first things I say is like AI is going to take all of our jobs. But if you look back at history, every technological revolution actually creates jobs. I mean, think about us, Adam. So I did a middle school career day, and most of the jobs that these kids wanted or were talking about, like they didn't exist when we were in middle school. And we're not like super old. I mean, we're old, but we're not, we're not too old. Um, and so this fear and this panic is natural. It's a part of the process. But I think leaders can really kind of reduce that by saying, hey, our job is we don't want to eliminate jobs. We want to make the jobs that you have more valuable. Now, will jobs look different in the future? Like, absolutely. But what should that look like? What could that look like? And then again, like working with your employees, getting their feedback, getting your customers' feedback to design that is a far better approach than going at it with a goal of like, hey, we want to cut X number of people. That's short-sighted, and I don't think it's going to serve these organizations in the long run.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, coming from like the HR side of organizations, retention, attraction, being able to staff your workforce properly, you know, your workforce, your people are your biggest asset to any organization, right? And often so don't get treated as much. So that's something that where if you were to have a strong AI adoption strategy where you're considering it and you're viewing, every angle of where it can help and where it couldn't, if I'm searching for a job, right, I'm going to be asking the question to my future employer, like, hey, where are you at with your AI strategy? And the reason I'm going to ask that question is because I will now know whether or not you've went through the AI adoption process and you absolutely need this job, right? Versus you haven't, and is this job replaceable in the next 6 months once you do adopt that strategy? Because we all know it's coming, right? The
Yeah.
wave's coming. It's just how wet are we going to get?
Yeah. And there's still a lot of companies that have not adopted, like Copilot, because for whatever reason, I mean, there are, Copilot, I think, is hands down the best from like a data security and, just data governance perspective if you're a
Mhm.
Microsoft shop. But, um, they have concerns about that, which are valid. You want to verify that. But like the risks of shadow AI, the risks of like employee attraction and retention. If I was interviewing at a company, they're like, "Yeah, we don't have AI because we're scared." Like, that's a big red flag. Or we have AI, and it's our view is like that we're going to try to replace jobs or something. It's companies need to think a few steps ahead of how people are going to be thinking and feeling about this before they're making these decisions. And that's something, they just need to think about the people side of this more so than any technological change we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, there's phases right now, right? I mean, you came from PNC. They're clearly a large, banking organization ahead of the game. You've been working on AI strategy for years now, where there's organizations that haven't even dipped their toe in that water yet, right? And then you're going to have organizations that are just saying, hey, you know what? We'll deal with it when the time comes. Right now, we don't have the head count, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the people in place to help us, right? So this isn't just a fad, right? This isn't just something that is going to be here now for the next, 2 years or 3 years. This is something that's going to change the way that we work, right?
Yeah.
And change the way that jobs are created. So instead of embracing the bad, I think we should look at from an optimistic standpoint of like how good this could be for, not only organizations, but for our everyday lives, like, making Southwest chicken egg rolls.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, slow and steady. So a lot of leaders still are like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, I know I need to use, but how do I do it? It is using Copilot to make chicken egg rolls, right? Find smart, simple, low risk ways for you to use the tool. Whether if you're a leader, if you're not comfortable, like you using it personally and figuring out, this is not a tool that you're going to be able to take a course or read a book and everything. You need to get your hands in there and get dirty and start using it and start very simple. Um, I gave a presentation to a group at the Kentucky Derby, like Churchill Downs, and one of the analogies I gave is like you're like a horse. You need to put your blinders on. You need to not worry about the race that everybody else is running because everybody's running their own individual race. Like you need to run your race given your strengths, your people, your culture, your goals, and just have faith in the process and start small, you know? And so many people aren't like they're they may know that, but they're just giving in to the pressure to move too fast. And I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes along the way. So start small, start with stuff you know, simple stuff, and then get more sophisticated. Like you'll advance your understanding, your acumen, the technology advances, and kind of working in parallel together, um, versus trying to, run a marathon before you know how to walk.
Yeah, and that's great advice. I mean, especially as we're coming into uncertainties with AI, what it can do for the workforce, how we can improve it, right? And even so, when you are looking for a position, right? I think being able to say, hey, I can utilize AI to make this position better by doing X, Y, and Z. And the only way you're gonna be able to experience that is if you're dabbling in it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you'll understand. And it's so clear, like leaders that know AI versus don't, because you could just tell in how they're thinking about it. So it's really important for you to make strategy decisions. Um, you need to understand like what it's capable of, what it's not capable of. Like I would reckon that the people that were maybe making those decisions, and this is probably a bold assumption, but the people at Ford that were making those kind of like rash decisions to eliminate those roles, like probably weren't super well versed themselves. They may have been able to see that, yeah, it's not the way to go just yet. And it's funny because anybody in AI that I know that's like really deep in the trenches, like they know like AI is not gonna replace jobs anytime soon. It'll restructure them and the roles will look different, but they're not worried about that. It's the people that aren't using it, that aren't familiar, that have their head in the sand. They're the ones that are worried about it. And so just start using it is the best way to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And using it, try to be familiar with it. It's nothing scary. It's something that's going to be, available. I mean, you can download Copilot apps, you can download ChatGPT, you can download Claude. These are all great tools that offer a free service just to get your foot in the water a little bit, get comfortable, get used to it. So, um, any advice for what you would do if you were, say, somebody watching this podcast saying, "Hey, I don't even know where to start." What advice would you recommend?
Yeah. So when I'm working with companies and leaders, I think the first thing you need to do is figure out what your goal is. And a lot of times you may not even have well-defined goals for your company or your team or yourself personally, right? So you need to know what your goals are. What do you want to achieve? It's the first step. Then, we work together, where I've seen be very helpful is, okay, how can AI help you achieve those goals, right? How can it support you in doing that? So you need to have that goal and that clarity first, because I see a lot of companies, again, just grasping at, my friend Bill, I was talking to him at an industry conference and he says he has an agent for this. I need an agent for this, I heard on this article that I need an agent for that, so they're just trying to do too much and it's all very fragmented and you do too much, you do nothing. So have that goal, have that clarity, then start very small, just one pebble in your shoe that you can eliminate. One way to make your employees' lives a little bit easier and more productive. And then you do another, and then another, and another. And throughout that process, like you're not going slow, you're going steady and you're learning and you're able to pivot a lot faster. Again, like the Ford example, if they were kind of making, these decisions like along the way, they wouldn't have laid off a bunch of people, had to hire them back on. They would have been able to be a little bit more dynamic. So slow and steady, like the old like tortoise and the hare, I think it was. Just kind of keep repeating that to yourself, read that to yourself. If maybe we should have like a reading of that the next podcast, Adam. You can dress as the tortoise or the hare and be impressed.
It is an excellent read. I will give you that.
Yeah,
Very
you're right.
inspiring read. So those of you look it up, Tortoise and the Hare. Um, but whether it's your personal life, whether it's your AI life, we don't have it figured out. Ford doesn't have it figured out, right? And we're all just really trying our best. And honestly, that's more than enough. Chevelle, it's always a pleasure. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.